Thank you very much for this thorough presentation that speaks volumes about Turkish society. We get a lot of data and a lot of insight from this presentation whenever we hear those results. Before we move on to our next speaker, I'd like to show you a couple of slides. We talked about the Anthropocene period. So the Anthropocene period, when did it start? That's a key issue, a key scientific question that's widely discussed. You know that the Industrial Revolution changed the course of humanity. It was a major event. Since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, human beings have emitted 4,045 billion tons of carbon dioxide to the environment. And every year, our carbon dioxide emissions total 9 billion tons. In 2050, the total emissions in the atmosphere, carbon dioxide emissions in the atmosphere, will be twice of the levels that occurred at the time of the Industrial Revolution. So we talked about 2 degrees of global warming, and carbon dioxide is the most critical issue about global warming. Simply decreasing our carbon dioxide emissions is not enough. We need to stop all sorts of emissions and, if possible, reverse its effects. We will be sharing examples of this. Today, we're going to listen to our next presentation by IKEA. We're going to listen to Hege Saebjornsten, who is responsible for sustainability in the UK for IKEA.
Hello. Really nice to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me to Istanbul. It's my first time in Istanbul, so I'm super excited to be here. My name is Hege Saebjornsten, and I head up sustainability for IKEA in the UK and Ireland. So I flew in from London last night, and I hopefully have a chance to experience your beautiful city over the weekend. And of course, just even flying here is not straightforward when you are a sustainability manager, because actually that's already an issue, right? So, you know, I'm really excited to have chosen to come, because it's not actually given that we'll fly around and actually come and meet people in person. So I'll share with you for about 20 minutes a bit of the sustainability journey with a bit of a focus on the customer-facing side, because I work for IKEA Retail, IKEA Group, which is the biggest franchise on the retail side, based in London, and of course, focusing a bit more on the circular side of the business. It's one of the biggest transformations that we're seeing as a company, and I'm sure that you're familiar with the constructs of circular economy, but I'll talk a little bit more about what that means for us as a company, but also the practicalities, which are both super exciting, entrepreneurial, creative, and extremely frustrating at times, because actually some of the biggest transformations that we have to overcome. So you will probably be more than familiar than most audiences with why sustainability as a topic is one of the most important challenges we face. At IKEA, we talk about having a people and planet positive business. And of course, there are 3 dimensions that are interconnected, and you cannot choose just one. They have huge interdependencies and really affect each other. Of course, climate change, we don't really need to talk about what's going on with the climate, but of course, huge challenges to the business. IKEA was 75 years old as a business last year. When we started 75 years ago with humble beginnings in Sweden, southern Sweden, founded by Ingvar Kamprad, the original founder of IKEA, the world was a very different place. And resources were very different, and businesses and business ecosystems were very different. We have to look at unsustainable consumption. Of course, as a retailer, a lot of people find this a bit of a paradox. And certainly for me, I get the question all the time, but you are IKEA, you sell lots of stuff. How can you talk about being a sustainable business? But of course, people need to eat, sleep, live, and have a good life. And actually, we need to make those choices the most sustainable, the most durable, and the highest quality of life for all. We're expecting 3 billion people by 2050 to rise out of poverty. How are we going to sustain that from a consumption level and have the resources as businesses to continue? And inequality is on the rise. So how do we make sure that the interdependencies are really looked after in unison? And so it's always interesting in different audiences. When I'm in Scandinavia, of course, everybody has something from IKEA in their home. Everybody knows who IKEA is. But I will just ask, who in the room has something from IKEA at home? Okay, so relatively high. Even the candles, right? All of those candles that people buy when they come to IKEA. So we have a very ambitious strategy to transform the business in the next 3 years. It's a very exciting journey. It's very demanding, but it really looks at how we create an affordable business for the many. It's how we interact with more of the many people, hence our movement into cities. Obviously, we know that people are moving to cities. What does that mean for our business? But also dependent into all of that is how we become a people and planet positive business. As I said, we're going to show a very short film now, but really it's about the digital revolution. It's about a complete re-engineering of our business to become a circular company, but also looking at what does that mean for our competencies, our leadership, our infrastructure, our business models, because fundamentally it's really challenging the base of the foundations of our business model as a company, which for a lot of people is quite a big mindset shift. So just want to...
What if we could create a better everyday life for the many people? For the couples that turn into families, the children, the lovers, for the old ladies, the single ladies, the single mothers, and for those who need to start all over. What if we always side with the many by designing the price tag before anything else? What if furniture could be better for nature, better for people? What if we could make furniture out of waste? What if old glass could get new life? What if we could collect all these bottles and turn them into something else? Like this chair. What if we could plant more trees than we use? And what if we could use wood in new ways so that this tree and all of these trees could grow to be just trees? What if we turn the tables on food and make meatballs without meat? What if we turn the tables on tables and make screws that aren't screws? In fact, what if we lose the screws completely so we can put things up, take them down, and put them up again? What if we try to design new behaviors instead of new products? Better play instead of toys, and better sleep instead of beds? What if water taps could save water? And light bulbs could save light? What if all our stores could power themselves? And what if the best packaging is no packaging? What if we could make furniture out of air? What if we tried twice and failed twice? And what if we try again? What if we celebrate our differences? Because without each and every person, we wouldn't be complete. What if we never settled for an answer? What if we always ask ourselves, what if?
So I wanted to show that just because there is now really this groundswell of new thinking within the company and this question of what if. And we have to imagine big, we have to be creative, and we have to make sure that actually IKEA has about 230,000 people globally, but certainly on my end, on the 12,000 people that I oversee in the business in the UK, how do we create that entrepreneurial spirit across the many in the business and outside the business? And that's one of the big challenges and opportunities that we're facing at the moment. And so we have our 3 strands to our people and planet positive strategy. Some of you might be quite familiar with it. It's around how we mobilize 1 billion people to live a sustainable and healthy life. And I picked up on some of the themes earlier around has to be driven by values. It has to be driven by practical, everyday things that the many people can relate to. I could talk about this for half an hour in itself, but of course, just as an insight, we don't talk about sustainable living anymore to our customers. It doesn't mean anything to them. It's not practical. It's not actionable. We have to create a completely new language. How do we become a circular and climate positive business? Not just in our operations, but in our behaviors, in our leadership, and our business models. And we also have to become a fair and equal business through our supply chain and how we deal with our communities across the board. And just some of the big ambitions. We launched our New People and Planet Positive 10-year commitments last year, similar to yourself. Ambitions by 2030. We set ourselves a rather ridiculous ambition to become a circular company by 2030. And it actually has some very tangible goals, like we will only use recycled and recyclable materials in all our products by 2030. Of course, that's textiles, is polyester, is wood, is everything that we use. And of course, again, we also have to completely innovate on our business models. And then it takes a bit of something called cathedral thinking. You know, we've set a massive ambition. We're not quite sure how we're going to create that, put that last brick in place when the cathedral's built, but we have to work it out as we go. And that's the mindset that really takes entrepreneurial thinking throughout the business. And we have to do it for the many people. It cannot be just for an elite few that can afford expensible products or can afford to go to those particular shops to buy those specific things. So it really comes back to also the foundations, and I heard the leadership talk about values. It's really about core values that go past trends, current legislation. It's really about the values of IKEA with our founder, really humble values around how do we look after resources? How are we actually adding value to people's lives? And if we're going to be around for another 75 years, it was mentioned earlier, you have to think about investment long term, then we have to actually think in a completely different way. So why circular? Of course, we know that our customers are expecting completely different behaviors from us. You will know young people want purpose-driven companies. They want transparency in supply chains. They want the narrative and the story behind why they choose one company over another. If you have 20 choices of product, whatever that product is, what makes you choose just one? And we know that purpose, transparency, and meaningful supply chain, one of the main reasons. We also know that we cannot rely on virgin materials, as you will be really familiar with, of course, in our supply chain. But also, if you see behaviors in cities like London, there is so much really high-quality consumer goods in circulation second-hand that if we don't take that market, if we don't engage with our customers in that way, we will actually potentially be out of business. So this makes complete sense from a commercial perspective, it makes sense from a people and planet perspective, and it also really galvanizes the business around entrepreneurial activity. So we've talked about the resource scarcity, which we'll be super familiar with. We know that the behaviors are changing. It's not just, when you mentioned earlier, the previous speaker, around people being anxious about the public transport, thinking about those little moments. People have the same concerns and behaviors. Digital platforms are enabling different kind of consumption everywhere. And of course, this linear model that has made not just IKEA a very successful commercial company, but most commercial companies, is no longer the efficient model. And of course, we have to now completely look at re-engineering how we use all the parts of our supply chain, our products, but also how we meet our customers. And we take a total 360 approach to circular business in IKEA. We look at range development, range and supply, and the materials we use. We look at our supply chain and meeting the customer and closing the loop on all of those. So it's a very ambitious, holistic way of looking at the ecosystem, which also forces us and the leadership to think out of silos, cross-business, and really start to become ecosystem thinkers, which does not happen overnight, but that's a very, very exciting journey in itself. And of course, we're looking now to design all our 12,000 products for repurpose, repair, and recycle. We have launched 9 circular design principles that are available and open source, but again, our whole design teams has to work with 4 of these mandatories and how that completely changes how we think about our products and the life cycle of products. And we know that we can start to look at products as material banks. We know that we can be smarter with our materials. We know that we have to eliminate waste, and we have to partner with others. I know that some of you in this room are already partnering with IKEA on some of our products. It takes entrepreneurs, it takes local ecosystems, local manufacturing. We're missing a lot of the infrastructure today, but it takes a completely different way of thinking. And when we then look at our democratic design principles, how it's designed into the DNA of our products to think about the life cycle, what will happen at the end of the first, second, third life of our products? As a retailer then, what is the behavior change job that we have to do with our customers? How do we engage customers in conversation and dialogue in ways we've never done? how can a retailer do that? What is our role in that? And we've started with humble products, just to show you a couple of humble examples. Circular economy often becomes a big, complex narrative that's difficult to understand. And just to show you a couple of examples. These are two products, everyday, very humble products made from waste, starting to close the loop on materials, but it's just the beginning. And we have some very, very bold commitments, as mentioned, around becoming 100% circular. And of course, the material side is particularly of relevance to yourselves, that all our materials used will be recycled and recyclable, including 100% recycled polyester. But again, how do we create those collaborations and ecosystems? How do we close the loop on materials, which was one of the biggest challenges that we face, as well as the chemical side, the technical side. And of course, we focus very much on the retail side of innovation and business model innovation, how customers acquire, care for, and pass on products. This is happening already. It's not something that's a nice to do. We see this as absolutely essential for the survival of a traditional linear business model, and again, taking a lead on working with others. And so touching on supply chain, of course, if you see this picture, these are images from the back of our stores in the UK. And what do you see? What's the first thing that you see when you think of these pictures? Waste, resources. These are examples of starting to close the loop on our actual waste materials from operations. The cardboard goes into becoming back of Billy bookcases. We sell a Billy bookcase every 8 seconds, which is quite crazy when you think about that. Our plastics from our resources goes into our products. And of course, textiles is one of the areas that we're really looking at. How do we close the loop on our textiles? And of course, then supply chains. This goes, and don't mention Brexit. I will not talk about Brexit today. You'll be happy to hear. But of course, then, we're investing in recycling plants. We are working and lobbying with local government to set up policies that allow us to work together. We're investing in entrepreneurs internally and externally to come up with innovations of how we create those supply chains. And this is just sort of what looks like a simple map. Many of you are probably familiar with the enormous complexity of reverse flow and circular logistics. I have people in my team who are working on this full time, and it's not a comfortable way for people to think a lot of the time. You have to think in this kind of living systems, ecosystemic way, and it takes a very new type of leadership. And of course, it's about the customer in the center of that, and how do we make it price efficient and relevant to the customer, and setting up our whole operations to really fulfill on this need. So when we look at meeting the customer, we know that actually to maintain the relationship with our customers over time, there is no loyalty anymore, not really. So in order to actually have an ongoing, meaningful dialogue and relationship with our customer, to actually engage with them on when they want to maybe lease a product. Maybe they don't want to own, actually younger audiences. And if you live in a city for 3 years and you know you're going to move on, why not lease it? What does that mean for our business models? What about parents who only need some furniture for maybe 1 year? Have to completely think about, again, engaging with customers on their terms, in their market, in their day-to-day lives. And of course, prolonging the life of products and materials. It sounds like a very obvious thing to do, but we have an idea of what does that actually mean. In London, we did research, and younger people today don't even feel comfortable using a drill. They don't even feel comfortable potentially using a hammer and nail to put up a piece of furniture in their home. For some people, that is just ridiculous to even imagine that that's the case. But as a flat pack furniture company that requires people to assemble their own furniture, and also with an ambition to prolong the life of products and make sure that all kinds of products live on, that's an issue. What happened to skills? How do we affect behavior? And so we know that people want emotional connections with their companies. They want to really take an active part in how products are made. They want to tell companies how they live and what their needs are, and they want to be part of that change. Of course, we heard about young people in particular, but actually all of us waking up to the influence that we have and the importance of being part of the solutions to climate change, not just feeling part of the problem. People have an enormous amount of anxiety around buying the right thing, choosing the right materials. One day you hear on Blue Planet that plastic is the new evil, and then we're addicted to convenience. We're addicted to fast food, we're addicted to all of these takeaways. So how do we help consumers then make those right purchases and the right decisions and create that emotional connection, as an example? In the UK, we have a furniture take-back service. It's a really problematic logistic service, as in you buy a new, I don't know if it's what it's like potentially in Istanbul, but in London, 45% of people in London don't own a car. So if you're buying a new bed or a new large furniture item, you're expecting the company, or you choose the company that will remove your other item before you buy new. And you want that company to show and prove to you that it's responsibly disposed of, ideally reused. And that's something we're working with in the UK. Then we have to build an ecosystem of charity partners and potentially material flows in the future to close the loop. It's about working in partnership, and again, a very different way of thinking, and you have to invest longer term. And we introduced a textile take-back and revival scheme in the UK. And of course, we know that the materials in circulation today have a chemical mixture that makes it impossible to really close the loop on flows of materials. But it's a behavior change that we start with our customers of really educating not just ourselves as a company, but our customers around don't throw anything away. Nothing should go to landfill. Nothing should go to waste, zero waste. All materials are resources for a new life. And we're starting to build our own capabilities and capacity and the return flow of customers even, and that dialogue to look at how we take back textiles. Today, we work with charity partners to reuse these textiles. The future is really to close the loop on materials, but equally, we're also looking at skills. So we're actually looking at providing workshops and experiences in our retail units because the skills are missing. And this is an example of, we opened our IKEA Greenwich store in London this year. It's a leading sustainable store. And it was mentioned the vision it took to create this building and this site earlier. And it's similar here. It's designed as a community hub. It's a retail outlet, but it's a community hub. We have a roof garden with a pavilion. We run workshops and events. We have a learning lab where we're really testing and trialing the engagement with the customer. What do customers want from a skills and development perspective? What do they do with their textiles? What do they do with products that they no longer want? We know they feel bad for throwing them away. They don't want to waste. And in the learning lab, it sounds kind of humble. It's a space where we run workshops and activities full-time, but it really challenges the foundations of what a store, a retail concept, is for. We also know that if you just want to shop now, you go online, you go on the website and you purchase online. The store experience, how we start to become partners in developing skills and behavior change, is becoming part of the value proposition of why customers come to IKEA, and why we also prove and evidence that we're not just about goals and objectives in our operations, it's really about creating this movement together. And so it is really for us about staying relevant in a really fast-moving world. It's on the material side, of course, and resources. It's relevance in the face of consumer changes, new and younger generations. It's also about really attracting the talent of a younger workforce that wants to be in charge and lead. And it takes a very different types of leadership. It takes a different ability to collaborate. And we know that actually, and I can share this on a personal note as well, this fast pace of entrepreneurship has to be matched with the ability to rest and restore as well. Because this kind of this complex, fast-moving entrepreneurial culture also has to bring in a new type of leadership that also allows for restoring both the cultural workforce and also how we work with our products. So we are on a really exciting journey as a company with our supply chain, with our partners, but we also know we're right at the beginning and everything remains to be done. And in the words of our founder, glorious future, it really is about having that long-term thinking, but really opening ourselves up for the vulnerability of trying and failing and being really ambitious with our entrepreneurial activities, but it also has to be done together. And then get the sense that this is a real leadership group sitting right here. So then how do you and how do we take this to the many in your organization, both from a demonstrating leadership perspective ourselves, but also really galvanizing and mobilizing that leadership in the many people in the organizations that we work for? Thank you.